Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journeys, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2023. And that brings us to a title which has been designated by Criterion at spine number 1199. And this is a work which is described as being from the year 1995. And the name of the filmmaker is Claude Chabrol. And the name of this work is La Cérémonie. This is the work, the chilling and very suspenseful and utterly engaging work from the filmmaker Claude Chabrol. And the screenplay is adapted screenplay by Claude Chabrol and Caroline Yachef. And this is based upon the novel by Ruth Rendell. And among its utterly captivating cast, we have people such as Sandrine Bonnaire and Isabelle Huppert, Jacqueline Bisset, Jean-Pierre Cassel, Virginie Ledoyen, and others. This is such a creepy film that puts one on edge. There is an undercurrent of type of viciousness or savagery, or the potential thereof, just lurking beneath the surface of a type of calm veneer that perhaps is not so calm. That is very barely hiding the potential chaos underneath. Oh my goodness, what a film this is. This is the work, Claude Chabrol's film, La Cérémonie. Courtesy of the Criterion Collection, we have La Cérémonie entering into the spine-numbered physical media catalog with this Blu-ray edition. And we'll talk a little bit more about the details, including the supplements that might be found here. But before we get to that, let us focus in on the plot or story structure of this work. And we're focusing in on a number of set characters. First off, we have a very wealthy, well-to-do family with a sort of patriarch and matriarch, and these are the characters that are portrayed by Jean-Pierre Cassel and Jacqueline Bisset accordingly. Catherine and Georges and their two children, and they, as I say, they live fairly wealthy, fairly well-to-do, and they are, or Jacqueline Bisset's character is early on trying to find a maid for the household, and therein lies the character played by Sandrine Bonnaire, Sophie. And here we have not just the introduction of Sophie to this household, but her actual hiring and being accepted into this world as a maid. But things are perhaps not quite what they seem, or it might be that this character of Sophie might be having her own agenda, or might be trying to hide certain things about herself, her personal life, and her background, and also her physical and psychological state of being. And this is something that is a very key plot point that involves something that she's trying to hide from her employers. We as viewers of the film early on understand what this is in terms of her struggles with reading, and her inability to be able to read at a certain level. And so we see early on how she's trying to deal with that, but also trying to keep that hidden for certain reasons that I think become more and more clear. They emerge, they make themselves known as the film progresses. And this is linked to her own, say, state of being, her own state of mind, her own, say, sense of self. But this is, I think, one of many things, not totally unrelated, of course, but one of many things that are part of the space that is the characterization of Sophie, Sandrine Bonnaire character. And we see a kind of edge, a kind of unsettled, maybe, sense of disquiet or something not quite right or something a little bit off. And there might be some sense of lack of harmony or disharmony, maybe not immediate at the surface, because after all, there is a way in which a kind of rapport between her station in life, in the context of the plot of this film, working as a maid for this very wealthy household on the one hand. So there is a type of veneer of it, maybe a sense of quiet professionalism on the one hand, a sort of understanding between one side vis-a-vis the other. But there is also a sense of something lurking underneath. And there also is the opportunity for the film to introduce another key character of this. And this is the character of Jeanne. And this is the postal worker who is portrayed by Isabelle Huppert. And Jeanne and Sophie, Isabelle Huppert character, and Sandrine Bonnaire character, they form a bond, a friendship that undergoes, one can say, a lot of transformations and a lot of examinations under the camera work and direction of Chabrol. That introduces a kind of kinship, a kind of friendship that could be based on shared experiences or shared traumatic experiences. They each have their own lives that have details that could be said to be enigmatic and also quite tragic. But that shared experience is something that could be said to be a way in which they are drawn together as characters. Also, their stations in life, both of them, perhaps in the context of Sandrine Bonnaire's character, Sophie, there's a type of quietness to her sense of resistance or disgust. In the context of Isabelle Huppert's character, Jeanne, she seems to be at times quite vocal and almost cynically comedic in her vocalization of her viewpoint vis-a-vis the bourgeoisie, and this bourgeois family that is definitely the context of this wealthy family that Sandrine Bonnaire's character is working for as a maid. So these class struggles, the class clashes, and the frustrations of, say, one class over another class, or vis-a-vis notions or conceptions, how they view other classes, let's put it that way, other social strata. This seems to be forming the heart of what could be said to be something lurking underneath, bubbling. And that seems to be slowly but surely, or perhaps even quite suddenly and violently, coming to the surface. And when the cracks begin to form, and when those fissures begin to become more and more evident, when the fault lines become clear, therein lies the way in which battle lines are drawn, in a manner of speaking, perhaps metaphorically, or perhaps not so metaphorically, because there are moments of clashes as well. It is not just unilateral, but it is multilateral in the sense that there are ways in which the bourgeois family, this very wealthy family, is seen perceiving themselves, or perhaps perceiving the outside world. One thing that's very interesting too to consider is query when one watches a film, just how much, quote unquote, one side might be deemed to be, quote unquote, villainous, or perhaps there might be some innocent nature to their goings on. It's just the nature of their existence that forms the battle lines of the class struggle that could be said to be at the heart of this film. And it is about, therefore, a sense of class and economics. It could also be said to be a type of vicious film that is about tensions mounting, where we have at the heart of this the friendship, the bond between these two characters, Sandrine Bonnaire's character and Isabelle Huppert's character. And you see a kind of kinship, as I mentioned, a kind of mutual support, that they're obviously very much taken with each other, and they like each other very much, and they form a close bond, but also see how much of that is a quote-unquote positive influence, and also how much of it could be said to be somewhat of a negative influence, because as things begin to mount, as the risks become slowly but surely heightened, and as details of the personal lives of these characters, both in the family context and the parents, the mother, daughter, father, daughter, etc., and also in the context of the postal worker and the maid and others, how the various details and secrets that they might have respectively risk coming to the fore, uh, how those chains of events run the risk of really turning everything on its end and creating a sense of potential tumult and chaos. And if it goes that far, then how far will things go? If the fireworks are to be exploded, just to what extent will these explosions take place, and what will be the end results of these explosions should they occur? And when I say the word explosions, this is a type of clash that is at the very heart of this drama, a clash of systems and ideas and personages and viewpoints and human beings and these lives. These clashes seem to emerge either subtly or not so subtly. But when they do emerge, what is the extent of them, and how will people cope, and what will be the framework of things at the end of the day when the dust settles and we see the end results of this. So as we progress from beginning, middle, to the very end of this film, this sublimely created and structured film, La Cérémonie. I should point out a number of things that are also, I think, on display very, very elegantly in the set of supplements that we will talk about as part of this wonderful Criterion release. But some things of note, there's a way in which sounds are employed. The music choices have a sense of distance, and a sort of cynical distance on the one hand, but that is also, I think, beautifully counterbalanced by the way that the camera subtly and slyly slides and pans and captures things in a really interesting sense of frame and mood that might seem almost imperceptibly to be acting on its own. There is a way in which the camera seems to be projecting information in a quote-unquote standard way, but when one slowly begins to identify the various tricks that are happening, the very subtle moves that are taking place, the way in which characters are together on the screen but then maybe are isolated, blocked off, the way that certain blocking is taken care of, or a way that characters are framed within a type of almost imbalanced look of what otherwise might be mundane scenes, etc. And when these wonderful stylistic flourishes compound upon each other and add to each other and create a sense of an elegant lattice work, that is this work, La Cérémonie, I think we begin to see that there is a sense of the mundane acting against the notion of a type of personalized chaos. And that's what I love about a work like this by Chabrol. There's a way in which the sense of control on the one hand, but frenzied chaos on the other. And I think it's shown in various things that might seem counterbalancing, but that counterbalance creates a whole that is utterly, I think, effective, and never feeling like we are being torn in many different directions, but rather we are being, everything seems to fit very well. So, and I point your attention, for example, to, the great performances. You can see the balance or balance of differences in the performances of, say, the characters in the family, the wealthy family on the one side, but then you have the balance, sort of different tenor of performance with the two women, the maid and the postal worker on the other, Jan and Sophie. So that creates a sense of counterbalance. Even within the duo themselves, you can get a sense of the performances. Sandrine Bonnet's performance, which has this sense of an almost icy veneer on the one hand, but there is a way in which her visage registers so much range of emotion just with a singular look. It's utterly captivating. and what the range of emotions could be. It could be from a sense of maybe subtle satisfaction to anger to an innocent, maybe a frolic feeling of a levity due to the friendship, a laughter, but it's a wide range. But it's registered in a way that has a sense of a of a veneer that is very. It captures so much with a very ever so subtle look. Which is incredible. And you counterbalance that with Isabelle Hubert's performance, which could be said to have a sense of outward, bubbly life to it, in the sense that her performance allows for so much movement, so much, say, energy, movement around, walking and talking. There is a type of sense in which, in a way, almost agitating the situation. Being a type of catalyst in a certain way, but see how, as the plot progresses, which character is actually the agitator or the catalyst, and which character is the recipient or the one that is responding to the stimulus. It might be one character or the other, or it might be switched. The roles might be reversed depending on the situation. That's what I mean when you have the sense of how different counterbalanced functions seem to be acting against each other, but then also in unison with each other, and perhaps even playing with different forms by changing spaces or changing spots along the way. And that's one of the great, brilliant things of works by Chabrol and La Cérémonie, the way in which different varying moods and tactics are combining to form this integrated whole that works. It really, really works. And you see before your very eyes a film that seems very subtle on the one hand, but you realize how experimental it is as it's playing with form. And it's also doing so in a way that is serving the function of the film in terms of a suspense plot, a type of crime thriller or potential of a crime thriller, also in the mode of, say, the crime thrillers in the vein a la Ruth Rendell, obviously, but also Hitchcock. I mentioned, too, the way it has stylistic flourishes. It's a reminder of the tradition and the cinematic tradition of Claude Chabrol and Nouvelle Vague, etc., now in the form of this film from '95. So, and then the performances all around, I mean, they are really quite mesmerizing. Indeed, I mentioned, for example, Virginie Ledoyen, who plays the daughter. There are some really key scenes between her and Sandrine Bonnet's character that are so captivating, and also the subtle, almost power struggle dynamics that could be said to be had when you have the great performances by Jacqueline Bisset and Jean-Pierre Cassel. Oh my goodness! And there's also a sense of a charming innocence too with this family that their performances bring, that makes what ends up happening all the more potentially chilling and suspenseful and horrifying. So there are those aspects which are really guided along so brilliantly by those performances. And, lest I forget, of course, the brilliant performances. Isabelle Huppert, as I mentioned, a type of bubbly, lively performance. It has a sense of the jittery nature that is almost experiencing many things at once, it seems. And there's a great way in which she is expressing certain ideas and almost doing it in a way that is uh, uh, before our very eyes, expressing seemingly various contradictory things at once. It's a towering performance by Isabelle Huppert on the one hand, and then Sandrine Bonnaire, this stillness on the one hand, or the way in which something can turn into a look of frustration or an air of disgust or struggle, or even a sublime sense of relaxation, or just watching TV, looking at what's being played on the TV when she's sitting in the room by herself, or perhaps when her companion is there as well, and just sitting, talking, eating on the one hand, either by herself or maybe with her friend, just looking, and just the way the camera lets us see how she seems to be non-reacting but also reacting at the very same time when we hear in the distance some dialogue or conversation that may or may not be directly about her, etc. So it is a chilling performance, a mannered performance that is so well designed and just incredible. So it's one of many incredible performances that are included in this film. What a what a this is a very chilling film indeed, and one of my favorites from this brilliant filmmaker Chabrol. It is this work, which is La Cérémonie. The Criterion Collection has released this film, La Cérémonie, on the single disc Blu-ray edition at spine number 1199, and it's purported to be based on what is described as a new 4K digital restoration with 2.0 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack. And just some quick notes about the restoration can be found in the fold-out insert, which I have removed prior to the start of recording this video. On one of the pages, it says about the restoration, and I quote, La Cérémonie is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.66 to 1. This new digital master was created from the 35mm original camera negative, which was scanned in 4K resolution by MK2 at Éclair Classics. The original 2.0 surround soundtrack was remastered from the magnetic tracks. Disc mastering next spec. So again, unfortunately, my experience with this film in terms of watching in the theater is nil, in the sense I've never seen this film in the theater, unfortunately. I have seen this film on, say, older physical media releases, but I haven't owned it before. And so having this Blu-ray disc from the Criterion Collection, this new release from 2023, is indeed the first time I'm owning this. And I admit it's been some years since I've seen this film, La Cérémonie, but so I'm recalling from memory, based on my earlier viewings of this, now watching this new Blu-ray and trying to compare in terms of my own subjective approach to this. And so I must say that I love the way this looks. It always had this look of a type of maybe a chillingly cold serenity. Let's put it that way. I mean, the tones of this were never, at least to my eyes and to my heart, they never were suggesting a type of warmth, but on the contrary, there's a type of cold, clinical nature that also has a suggestion of certain details in the background, of props, but things that also look somewhat washed out, which I think is very much part of the color palette and part of the world rendering here. And I think it's captured so brilliantly in the way it looks and sounds here. And I should make a point here that the sound too is so integral. It really is integral. I mean, it's of course, sound is very important for most of the films that we will watch. There's a way that sound is operating in the world of La Cérémonie, which is so integral and so critical, and you can feel that being replicated in such a heart-pounding way when I'm watching this and hearing this from the Blu-ray Criterion. I love this film, and I loved how it looked and sounds here. And it feels like something that is faithful and having a sense of fidelity to the era, sort of mid-90s look and feel to it, which I think is very important, very apropos. It's not overly produced in the sense of a restoration. I think it captures the mood and feel of the times, mid-90s, just right. It feels just as I remembered it, watching it on earlier, older physical media releases, but also it has a sense of course, looking and feeling quite pronounced and feeling quite wonderful indeed. So this is a great, I think, a great look and feel as presented here by this Criterion Collection release for La Cérémonie. Next we have the disc, which I already have in the machine here, and as you can see, the Blu-ray disc has this great still shot from the film showcasing the two leads, Sandrine Bonnaire and Isabelle Huppert, in a particular moment of the film, in a locale or location of the film. That's a very important place, one of many. And I look here, and you can have the menu. It's the section for the movie, and then also chapters. And I'm now scrolling down to the supplements section here, and I press and look. It's hard to see. I apologize for the way that I'm shooting this video. I really apologize. It's hard to see, I know, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 supplements. Excuse me, 8 supplements that are included here. So it's a really wonderful and voluminous collection of supplements, which is really nice. Maybe in some recent Criterion releases, and also not so recent. I mean, this has been happening all throughout Criterion's history. Sometimes you'll get releases that don't have quote unquote a large quantity of supplements, but that's not true for this work, La Cérémonie. You've got a lot here, and they're all really great in their own way. So I'll try to describe why I feel that way. So first up, we have Bong Joon-ho, the celebrated filmmaker Bong Joon-ho. And here it says, in this interview conducted by the Criterion Collection in 2023, filmmaker Bong Joon-ho pays tribute to one of his cinematic heroes, director Claude Chabrol. So this is approximately 13 minutes. The great filmmaker, artist Bong Joon-ho sits down with the Criterion Collection and talks about his love and appreciation for the works of Chabrol, including La Cérémonie. And I love the comments that he gives here. For example, he talks about the certain element of the Chabrol style of suspense, a certain type of suspense that is very Chabrol-esque. And he talks too about comparing his works with, say, that of Alfred Hitchcock and also Brian De Palma and others. And Bong Joon-ho describes Chabrol's work as a type of brittle pastry, which I think is so apropos. It's a type of finitely assembled work that has a kind of rigorous structure, but also has such delicacy. And it almost like a lattice work delicacy that has the potential in a grand cinematic way of almost being so deliciously delicate, and it's that sublime nature that leads to so many avenues, a kind of labyrinth, which is, I think, really great. And he talks to, Bong Joon-ho does, about the roots in the French New Wave, Nouvelle Vague, and also how there is an undeniable sense of the class struggle, social context. And he also mentions too, Bong Joon-ho does, and I'm going to try to be as vague as possible, again, not to try to spoil this film for the benefit of those who have not yet seen this great film, but he does talk to a little bit about the plot dynamics and characterizations, and how certain aspects of, say, victimization, let's put it that way, in this work, may or may not necessarily be deserved, because we may not be privy to any direct reasons as to why certain things might be happening the way they happen. So there are arguably many innocent parties, let's put it that way, that are part of the surroundings, which then makes the concept of makes the interpretation or the reading of this film as a social class struggle film all the more, I think, challenging, because of what the outcomes of that kind of interpretation are. This idea of social revolution, whether it can be deemed to be quote unquote a success or quote unquote failure, and how one defines those, and what are the stakes and what are the psychological outcomes of this. So I think that's all part of the comments here that Bong Joon-ho is alluding to quite astutely, as always. And then talking too about way in which violence is depicted, he makes a really brilliant comparison, compare-contrast point with another very similar work, which is Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. And when Bong Joon-ho mentioned, before he mentioned this, I never thought of comparing Taxi Driver, the Martin Scorsese film, with Claude Chabrol's La Cérémonie. But when Bong Joon-ho brought it up, and he was speaking about it, I really found that comparison to be such a genius point that he was making. And again, I don't want to go into too many details for those who have not yet seen either La Cérémonie or Taxi Driver. He says that there are similarities and differences, let's put it that way. And even in the conversation of differences between the two works, there are ways in which those differences highlight a kind of kinship, which I think is great. Also, the performances, Hubert, Bonner, and also the way the camera engages or disengages, the fluidity of a camera pan, etc. Nothing is gratuitous, according to Bong Joon-ho. Brilliant discussion. So here we have a Criterion Collection producer released from someone who definitely knows his stuff when it comes to filmmaking and artistry, and definitely knows his stuff when it comes to cinema history and filmmakers. You can tell Bong Joon-ho loves the works of Claude Chabrol. It's so great hear the words of Bong Joon-ho, who is this great filmmaker and great film lover, cinema lover. So, and he expresses that here as, again, like he has always done, here talking about La Cérémonie and Claude Chabrol. So this is from 2023. It's approximately 13 minutes. So this was the Criterion supplement going forward. But then we'll go here, and then going forward, we have a number of supplements that are taken from other areas and from circa 1995 and beyond. But that doesn't, they're still wonderful and great. It's great to have them included here. For example, the making of La Cérémonie. This program presents a behind-the-scenes look at the making of La Cérémonie in 1995, featuring director Claude Chabrol and actors Isabelle Huppert and Sandrine Bonnaire. This is described as being from the year 1995. It's approximately 18 minutes. And we have certain discussions with Claude Chabrol. We see him on location or maybe on his way somewhere talking about, describing La Cérémonie, his working style, his working habits, how he feels about working on this. Certain members of the cast and crew are surrounding him as he is making himself available for certain interviews or quick interviews, etc. And also speaking with some of the actors, such as Sandrine Bonnaire, insights into her performance and her approach to the character that she plays. Also Isabelle Huppert as well, discussion about her characterization of her character. There's also some discussion from others, such as Jacqueline Bisset as well. Oh, I love the comment. It's Isabelle Huppert who talks about working on this film and working with Chabrol. I mean, one of the things is the brilliant work that has been created in the great combination, the great collaboration between Huppert and Chabrol, and that's spoken about in a separate supplement, which we'll talk about as well. But one of the things she says, Huppert does, is talking about working on this film and working with Chabrol. And it's like, and I paraphrase, it's like a butterfly caught in a net. It's great. And she says the camera is the net. So it's almost like the camera is acting in a way that's trying to capture something that may or may not be seeking this type of freedom. And the way that the camera, it's suggesting a camera type of slyly moving about, but also trying to be as invisible and imperceptible as possible. And I think back to the way that Bong Joon-ho talks about the camera work of Chabrol. It's a great description. So what a great documentary this is. So this is, again, something taken from circa 95, but it's still great to have, and you get some of the discussions from the actors and also Claude Chabrol directly. So approximately 18 minutes, so please check it out if you can. Next is selected scene commentary, and this is totaling approximately 29 minutes. And it says, this program presents 5 scenes from La Cérémonie with commentary by director Claude Chabrol. And in fact, you see Claude Chabrol in the studio recording these excerpt scene select commentary tracks, and then we see the scenes play out and over here over the with his voiceover commentary over that as well. So these scenes are quite integral to the I mean, they're very integral to the plot of the film. So, of course, I suggest watching the film first, and then you can watch these scene select commentaries, totaling 29 minutes. Oh, this is so wonderful. Specific scenes, talking about here in some of the scenes are about how he really purposely aimed for unconventional angles in the camera work, which is also echoing a lot about how the camera is a type of sly engagement with the workspace of the film, and also this idea of shared psychosis between the two main characters, Sophie and Jeanne, and how this may form a basis of understanding or not as to why they might be compelled or motivated to seek to do the things that they are trying to do in this film. And then also talking about some key climactic moments of this work, and things like how certain objects or pieces of the decor create a type of unity in the situation. The gate of the house is also remarked upon, and movement through such gate or surrounding such gate is very important indeed. And also some discussion about the way that the characters, there's some interesting editing choices in some of the scenes, some of the climactic scenes as well. So what a great commentary or select scene commentary section here. And you actually see Chabrol in the studio with the headphones in front of the microphone. It makes one wish that there was a full feature-length commentary track the entire way through. But this is still great to have. So please check this out if you can. Again, approximately 29 minutes total. Now, that's not all, because then we have this. Next up is Isabelle Huppert and Claude Chabrol, Crossed Portraits. In this program, directed by Jean-Pierre Devielle, actor Isabelle Huppert and director Claude Chabrol reflect on their special bond as collaborators and friends. It aired on French television on December 23rd, 1998. This is from 1998, approximately 22 minutes. And they speak about, we see them maybe in cars or taxis, and Claude Chabrol is talking a little bit about working with Huppert on certain projects, and Isabelle Huppert is talking about the working relationship, and then sometimes you see them separately, and then you see them together in the same space, or sitting next to each other talking to maybe an interviewer who's off camera. So it's really fascinating, and we come to realize or are reminded about how many films they have done together over the course of their careers, and so including La Cérémonie. And so you see some of the clips from these films. It's great to see the incredible range of Huppert under the direction of, in these films directed by Chabrol, the incredible range of the characters that she's portraying from film to film to film. It's an amazing example of the amazing prowess of her skills and genius gifts as an actor performer. And it's so great too. There's so many things that there's a moment when you see almost how much they appreciate and admire each other. They acknowledge that there's a kind of friendship and bond. It has a sense of maybe a kind of avuncular nature. There's a moment when they're talking about it. There's no, I mean, they're very frank, or he's very frank about how there's no sense of a kind of maybe it's not like a relationship that is based upon a type of mutual sexual attraction or anything like that, but they have a shared sense of humor. There's a shared sense of how they like to avoid conflict, so they have certain similarities in terms of their personalities. There's also an interesting moment when Claude Chabrol recounts an interview or something that a print interview that Isabelle Huppert made, and asked about the great directors that Isabelle Huppert has worked with, and Claude Chabrol recounts how his name wasn't included in that list. You can tell that he seems a little bit hurt by that even now, and then Isabelle Huppert is trying to explain, or maybe trying to correct the record, and actually maybe she says at one point she never said that, or it's not, or do you have the interview, or do you have the printed article, and he doesn't, etc. So there's an interesting interplay between that, and it shows, I think, just the nature of how well I think they can speak freely with each other, and how much mutual respect and admiration they have for each other. And it's also evident in the output, the work, including La Cérémonie. I mean, you think about La Cérémonie, let's think about that performance. I mean, they're all great performances, but for example, Isabelle Huppert's performance as La Cérémonie, it's groundbreaking, and I just want to emphasize again just how much it shifts. It shifts from being almost, on the one hand, a kind of outwardly outlandish, almost eccentric characterization, and then there are moments of very quiet, calm demeanor, like chill, then that can turn at an instant. It's a really powerful performance. There's a way in which it's funny and witty, and also quite scary and horrific at the same time. So, and oh, great. So this documentary, Isabelle Huppert and Claude Chabrol, Crossed Portraits, excuse me, approximately 22 minutes. And that's not so many supplements. It's wonderful, right? That's not all. Next, we have Sandrine Bonnet's interview. In this 2020 interview, actor Sandrine Bonnet describes Claude Chabrol's approach to directing actors and how she envisioned the character of Sophie in La Cérémonie. This is approximately 12 minutes. It's Sandrine Bonnaire, the the brilliant legacy of Sandrine Bonnaire's work, and there's so many key touchstone performances that she has provided for the cinematic landscape writ large. It is just so undeniable and so special. And she recounts too how she acknowledges that she is maybe known for a number of very famous roles, included in which one can say is the role of Sophie in La Cérémonie. And it's a great reminder too. I mean, this was made in '95. This is now, it's considered a great classic, and it's done so because, or it is so for many reasons. One of which is the performances, and I think she's very right to mention this. It is a towering performance. Sandrine Bonnaire's performance here is electrifying. There's so much that she doesn't show, but even in the act of not showing, she shows. I don't know if that makes any sense, but even Claude Chabrol mentions it, I think, in one of the earlier supplements, about how she is able to show so much, but using acting techniques that are invisible. When you look at, just go to a scene in the film, and you can look at her face. She's not speaking, but you can see what emotions are being registered at that particular moment. It is magnificent, magnifique. So to hear her comments here, talking about the performance of Sophie, the kind of the picture of a leak, and how that informed how she approached the role, and also the choices of fashion, and also hairstyle choices as well. These are very, very key details that she points out in this great interview. Again, approximately 12 minutes. This is with Sandrine Bonnaire. Wow, that's not all, because then we have this interview. In this interview, co-screenwriter Caroline Eliashev shares her thoughts on true crime stories and what they reveal about society. This is approximately 9 minutes. This is from the year, it's described as being from the year 2000. And the idea or notion, this is based upon the crime thriller story, a Ruth Rendell tradition, also a la Hitchcock or a la Chabrol, perhaps. But also there is a way in which one can sense or feel types of ties or influences, or maybe indirect references to what are known as true crime stories. And so here, Ilyashev mentions in passing, for example, some examples like the very infamous Papin case, etc. So it's a very interesting way of introducing those aspects. And when one watches La Cérémonie, I think one can see also maybe embedded delicately in a nuanced way, or perhaps even very direct way, metaphorical way, or perhaps not so metaphorical way. This notion of connections with this idea of crime thriller, and also the true crime notions and aspects that are mentioned here. So 9 minutes, brilliant, incredibly insightful. So also please check that out if you can. Next, wow, this is off-screen sound in La Cérémonie. In this episode from the Criterion Channel series, Observations on Film Art, Professor Jeff Smith demonstrates how director Claude Chabrol manages to play his audience like a piano, evoking suspense, isolation, and class conflict through an expertly tuned soundtrack. This is approximately 9 minutes. And so this is great because it does remind us too about how sounds, off-screen sounds, mentionings of dialogue, etc., are being employed here in a very deft and very purposefully stylized way, again, to heighten mood and heighten tension and suspense, and also to illuminate certain moments of characterization. I think it's a reminder too of just how key the soundtrack is. So this excuse me, this is another one to check out if you haven't already, approximately 9 minutes. And then we have the trailer, which rounds out it's a great trailer, rounds out the wonderful collection of supplements here. There's a lot, a number of which are borrowed from, say, other sources, other non-Criterion sources. They're it's wonderful that they're still able to be included here. There's one that's borrowed from the Criterion channel. There's one that's newly minted from 2023 and Bong Joon-ho's discussion, etc. So it is packed. It's really packed, and you get so much. And if this is your first time into the world of Chabrol, oh my goodness, this is a great primer, great setup. When you have, it's right, it's not just quantity. I know it's all about quality, but when you have a high quantity of high quality stuff, it makes you feel doubly good. So I think that's how I feel about this. Well done for being able to do this. I don't claim to know all the release history of this film and all the releases of this work at all. So I don't have a claim to that type of knowledge base. But based on my own, again, subjective experience, having this film on this Criterion disc is great, and then having these supplements makes me love the film even more. So, oh my goodness, this is a great release. And so now let us conclude our conversation of this, I think, great release from Criterion with some aspects of our discussion points about the packaging and the cover art. You can see the cover art here with this red background and this font, this type of handwritten type of font, which I think is great. All caps and close-ups on the faces of our two lead roles here, Bonheur and Hubert. Here it's and what are they thinking? So I think this is a really quite fascinating look here, and I love the look of this in terms of the cover art. Point out here, art director Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, designer Eric Skillman, art production coordinator William Breeze, art assistant Julie Sussman. And it continues on through to the back in terms of this red color motif and the sort of handwritten type of font, which I think is really quite apropos. And we see that font continued in the and the choice of shot for the Blu-ray menu, the still photo Blu-ray menu. And I'm going to again refer to the fold out insert, which has a continuation of the sort of red yellow colored motif. It's a fold out. Again, I wish it could have been the staple booklet, but c'est la vie. But it's not such a bad la vie if one thinks about it, because it does include the great essay, Sarah Weinman's essay, which is called Domestic Disturbances. It is a brilliant essay, again, equal parts primer on Chabrol, a commentary on how this work fits into the context of the filmography of Chabrol, Hubert, Bonheur, and others, and then the film itself, very key points. Of course, my strong recommendation is to first watch the film, La Cérémonie, and then after you've seen it, you can read the great essay called Domestic Disturbances. Oh, that's a great essay. There we go. So there you have it. That's La Cérémonie in a nutshell. I just want to emphasize once again how much I really admire this film. It is so gripping, and it's hard to believe it was made in 95. So 05, 25. That's almost 30 years. Almost 30 years since it was made. I can't believe it. It was made around 95, so I have this feeling about how, for me and my own subjective viewing experience, that it still feels like a new release for me. And watching it now, I see how parts of it have aged in terms of props and 90s decor, the television set, when you see opera being played on the TV set, the cassette tape recorder, which is an interesting device in and of itself in the context of the film. And you see these, and the telephone, how the telephone is very important. So you see these aspects of technology that are now indeed quite antiquated in the time that we're watching it, say 2023, 2024, of course, but that takes nothing away from its power, right? It has a charm and a quaintness on the one hand, which is very powerfully established, and I think it's done so deftly because it has this way almost of creeping up on you and surprising you, and then suddenly grabbing you, and then never letting go. And I think that type of power is something that I was so pleasantly reminded of when I rewatched this film, courtesy of this Criterion release. What a film this is. Brilliant film all around. The work by Claude Chabrol, which is La Cérémonie. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great, great, great movies, including La Cérémonie, including the works of Claude Chabrol, including the works of Bonner and Huppert and others in the Criterion collection, the Criterion channel, and beyond. So until the next video, my dear, dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.